Hello and welcome to another video review from AV Forums. I'm Phil Hinton and I've been the AV Forums editor since 2003. I'm also a fully trained and qualified THX and ISF calibrator with 17 years of experience. In today's video we're looking at the LG C10 OLED TV. If you like our reviews and want to see more of them while supporting our channel, please like the video and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click the notification bell to be informed every time we upload new video content. You can also read the full in-depth review at avforums.com, which goes into more detail than this video summary. Also, don't forget to check out the TV forums at Europe's largest AV community on AV Forums to see what owners of this LG TV think about it after normal use in their own homes. We are also changing the layout of our TV reviews on YouTube this year to give you the performance and measurement results first before covering the design features and verdict. So let's find out how the C10 performs. As we always do within our reviews, we measure the out-of-the-box picture presets to find those that get as close as possible to the industry standards. The idea is that a TV must get close to these standards in at least one of its picture modes so end users can see content as it was mastered and intended to be seen. With the 2020 LG OLED TVs, we get Filmmaker mode, which is a new picture preset that replaces the Technicolor option from the 2019 lineup. Filmmaker mode is designed to put the TV in the most accurate picture setting of Rec 709 colour, BT 1886 gamma and D65 white for SDR content, and BT 2020 colour, D65 white point and ST 2084 PQ for HDR content. It also switches off all the unnecessary image manipulation settings such as true motion, noise reduction and so on, so you get the image as intended without any manufacturer processing. We recommend the Filmmaker mode for all your out-of-the-box viewing, with the OLED light adjusted for your viewing environment. Out of the box it's set for 100 nits, which will be too dark for anyone not watching in a pitch black room. You should move the OLED light adjustment to best suit your room and conditions. The grayscale tracking for an out-of-the-box preset was good, with just a few small errors at the brighter end of the scale. Red tracks a smidge too high with green tracking a little low, but no more than 5% at worst. This keeps the delta E errors for most of the track under the visible threshold of 3, with a slight rise around 3.5 from 80% stimulus. This doesn't actually translate into any visible error or tint when watching TV or film content, so Filmmaker mode would appear to be pretty accurate for an out-of-the-box preset. Moving to the Rec 709 HD colour gamut results, and we can see that once again Filmmaker mode is accurate with only slight issues seen within the gamut results. Magenta has a hue error towards red, and red is slightly oversaturated within the saturation tracking chart. However, the delta E errors are under the visible threshold of 3, meaning that none of these issues is seen within TV and film content on screen for the vast majority of viewers. We managed to get very similar results from the ISF expert modes, but these do have some picture enhancement and manipulation features switched on at default, like true motion. If you use these modes, you'll need to remember to switch these off if you want to see the content as it's intended. There are two ways to calibrate the SDR picture modes for the LG C10 with CalMan AutoCal or using the manual controls. We performed a calibration with both techniques and managed to achieve the same results with no real differences in the end result graphs. As you can imagine, we managed to get very accurate indeed, with no visible issues seen at all. Looking at the grayscale results, we can see absolute accuracy is achieved with a maximum delta E error of 0.5, which is miles below the visible threshold of 3. Plus, gamma tracks perfect for BT 1886 with no visible issues at all with TV and film viewing on the LG C10. The Rec 709 colour gamut results are also excellent, with an average delta E error of 0.91 and a maximum of 2, which once again is well below the visible threshold for errors to be seen. Not all the points within the saturation graph are absolutely bang on target, but the errors are so small to be invisible. On-screen colours look perfect, with excellent skin tones adding to the superb accuracy for SDR content. The LG C10 has HDR10, HLG and Dolby Vision HDR capabilities. We measured peak brightness at 659 nits at 1, 2, 5 and 10% windows in the most accurate image preset to the standards in D65 white. Full screen peak brightness was 140 nits, and the C10 has a strong automatic brightness limiter or ABL circuit where 100% white is displayed on screen. The C10 also follows the HDR standards for PQ EOTF tracking to the SD2084 standard, and it also tone maps for 1000 and 4000 nit content slightly differently. This is with dynamic tone mapping switched off. For 1000 nit content, it follows the standard closely before hard clipping at the peak brightness of 659 nits. With 4000 nit content, it again follows closely, but it does start to roll off earlier and more gently to allow more specular highlight details to remain visible before clipping at 659 nits. Using the dynamic tone mapping setting with all HDR10 content follows the same rough results as the 4000 nit content, but it can look brighter or darker depending on image attributes and the tone mapping algorithm. The colour gamut tracking for saturation points to DCI-P3 within 2020 is also very good for an OLED TV. Obviously the colour volume is still a weak point for OLED, but colour accuracy is still good with nice saturation tracking that gets fairly close to where it should be at various points. This means that skin tones remain natural and lifelike with nicely saturated primaries. We measured BT 2020 coverage at 73% XY and 79% UV, with P3 measuring in at 96% XY and 99% UV. Our assessment and review here is for the 65-inch version of the LG C10, but performance attributes should be very similar across the range of C10 televisions, and they all have the same features available. The C10 naturally replaces the outgoing C9 in the LG OLED lineup for 2020, and as such it adds a few new features, but overall there isn't a massive leap ahead to the actual OLED picture quality stakes. Panel uniformity was decent at most brightness points with no obvious signs of colour shift, dirty screen effect or banding. However, on this review sample at 5% stimulus, we did see a dark patch to the left side of the screen and some banding in a pitch black room. We didn't, however, notice this during our testing with normal TV and film content in SDR and HDR. We found just above black performance to be excellent with SDR content, and with new calibration controls for 2.5, 5 and 7.5% white adjustment, it's easy to dial in image accuracy. The same wasn't true for HDR and Dolby Vision content, where the brightness control is left at the default setting of 50. Here we did notice some floating blacks in certain test content, and also near black flashing with some tricky scenes. One obvious scene from Stranger Things that we tested is usually a favourite on self-emissive displays like OLED, as it has a pitch black environment. In this case, in episode 6 from season 3, Eleven crosses to the upside down to try and find somebody, and this transitions to her being in a pitch black environment and walking in water. Usually, this looks incredible on an OLED TV, but we did find that there was some flashing black artifacts and some posterization covering the entire screen at some points. This was consistent, and it could be repeated within the scene. We've had to set the ISO on the camera pretty high to capture the actual effects that we could see by eye, and as such the blacks that looked to be lifted here are actually pitch black. It's more the artifacts that we're trying to capture on camera. However, it is possible to mitigate this with some calibration adjustment or just turning down the brightness control a few notches to crush the black slightly. We will make sure that this is fed back to LG, and we must stress that these artifacts were only seen within some content in pitch black viewing. So while this is a problem that needs a firmware fix, it's far from being a deal breaker or a major issue that affects all viewable HDR content. Plus, it can be mitigated while we wait for a fix. Moving to the video processing provided by the A9 Gen 3 AI enhanced processor, and we found the motion to be a big improvement on this year's LG C10. There are a few new features introduced with True Motion, but even with that switched off, the C10 manages to correctly play back 24 frames per second material without any induced judder and with the correct pull down. Plus, image blur only consists of that which is in the actual viewing material and not being introduced by the TV. TrueMotion has had a few tweaks for 2020, and the biggest plus point for OLED fans is that black frame insertion, or BFI, is now usable in various settings without introducing obvious flickering. Accessed through the TrueMotion menu, you can find the various settings in the user options under OLED Motion Pro. There are 4 settings: low, which applies 70% duty cycle; medium, which applies 50%; high, which applies 50% plus black frame insertion; and auto, which automatically applies an optimized duty cycle based on real-time content analysis. We found that low and medium worked well without any noticeable flicker, but we also noted that there was no apparent improvement in motion resolution. We also noticed that there was still some interpolation being added to the low and medium settings, even with deblur and dejudder at 0. High and auto still have too much flicker to watch for any length of time, but it's nice to see some progress is being made with BFI. It should also be pointed out that by using Motion Pro you reduce the light output, so it's not recommended to use with HDR content. Another feature within TrueMotion is Cinema Clear, which is designed to improve motion and resolution, but without the side effects of motion interpolation and soap opera effect. It would be fantastic if I could report that the final result did exactly that, but sadly with someone like eyes like mine that spot interpolation straight away with any 24 frames per second material, it doesn't quite work. So, in my case, I would still switch TrueMotion off with film content, but it's nice to see LG trying to push the technology to reduce the soap opera effect downsides. With normal TV and sports, it will work better for most viewers, but certainly not with film content. The HDMI inputs this year are HDMI 2.1 but at 40 gigabits per second instead of 48, as seen within the test on our new Meridio 7 generator. We also noted that within the EDID information extracted from the C10 that there is no support for DTS audio decoding on board this year. We are also moving over to the Meridio 7 generator for input lag testing, as it's far more accurate and flexible than the Leo Bodner meter, which requires messy workarounds to measure 4K signals. So from this review onwards, we'll be using the 7 generator exclusively for input lag measurements, which we can do at any resolution and refresh rate. We managed a result in 1080p and 2160p at 60Hz of 13 milliseconds including HDR, and at 120 frames per second in 1080 including HDR at 6 milliseconds. The LG C10 is a superb OLED TV with accurate image quality in SDR and HDR. I watched quite a number of 4K UHD Blu-rays while I had the TV here for review, and it never missed a beat with the majority of content. Jaws has recently been released on the format with a new HDR grade in Dolby Vision with a Dolby Atmos remix, and it looks and sounds sublime on the C10. Colours are saturated but natural with superb skin tones, adding believability to proceedings. Blacks are deep with good shadow detail to add depth to the image, and there's copious amounts of detail on view. Close-ups of faces reveal every pore and line with superb definition, and grain is visible as it should be. Being an OLED TV with picture level control, the stops of dynamic range available are excellent and make films like John Wick pop with sumptuous black details, excellent shadows and specular highlights with superb detail on offer in Dolby Vision. Motion is also excellent with no issues with induced judder seen with 24 frames per second material. The tone mapping of HDR10 content is also very good, and we didn't mind using the dynamic tone mapping as it doesn't really differ anymore from the intent of the content, given that all TVs tone map differently to the standards. With 4000 nit content, there was excellent highlight retrieval with no unnecessary dimming of the image overall to achieve it. Overall, the C10 is yet another superb OLED TV for gaming, sports and movie fans with excellent accurate images in SDR and HDR. The LG C10 uses the same basic design as the 2019 model with a bezel-less screen, an ultra-thin chassis and a sloped stand. It remains a stylish TV, and the inclusion of a 48-inch screen size will undoubtedly prove really popular this year, and we'll have a review of that as soon as possible. The 65-inch has a very heavy stand that helps with keeping the whole panel sturdy and secure on your mounting surface, and of course you could wall mount the C10 using the industry standard VESA mounting points. The layout of the connections is sideways and rearward with a hard-wired power cord. To the side are a CI slot and 3 HDMI 2.1 40 gigabits per second inputs with a USB 3.0 port. Rearwards, with 2 USB 2.0 and 1 HDMI 2.1 40GB/s port, along with antenna and satellite, a LAN port, optical digital output, and audio and headphone output. The C10 continues to use the excellent Magic Remote, which remains an effective and intuitive controller for navigation of the WebOS smart platform. The wand also allows for voice control via the built-in smart assistants, and there's an excellent remote app. We really can't fault the remote control, and it fits nicely with the price point and level of the TV. The LG C10 is an impressive OLED TV that doesn't make massive strides ahead of the C9 but does add some nice new features. This includes the new A9 Gen 3 AI processor, filmmaker mode and Dolby Vision IQ. There's also a host of new gaming features, HDMI 2.1 inputs at 40GB/s and improved CalMan auto calibration. The WebOS smart platform also includes Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, and for non-UK territories it offers excellent app support. In the UK, however, there is no Freeview Play for catch-up services on terrestrial channels, and while these issues can be mitigated by using an off-board streaming device, it would be nice if LG could confirm soon which apps will be turning up on the 2020 sets. Gaming wise, it's also hard to beat the C10 and the features it offers this year, and while OLED TVs are more susceptible to image retention if used with bright image modes and with static images left on screen, the new panels are more resistant to burn, and there are also better mitigation technologies and wash cycles to help with this. So given you follow the advice and use the correct image brightness settings with HDR gaming, you shouldn't have anything to worry about. It's all about using common sense and being aware of the possibilities. Overall, while we did find a few small issues with the C10, we feel these should be rectified by LG following feedback, and these can also be mitigated in the meantime, which means they shouldn't impact too much on the use of the C10. The main issue the C10 does have is the outgoing C9 and the fact that it does have Freeview Play for UK users and is currently available at a reduced price point compared to the C10. Whichever you decide to go for will be, of course, personal choice for you, but the C10 is a strong OLED TV for 2020 and still manages to snag a highly recommended badge for its accurate image quality, gaming features and improved motion.